So we're doing our deck dinner not in the deck today. We're in Waterton.
Yeah.
And James can have the floor while I make salad. So we got salad on reduce to clear or whatever, and this for James, and some other things. But did you want tomatoes in your salad?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll get stuff made and you just talk to the people.
I don't know if I've got much to say, but
You always have lots to say.
not so much recent. Just been listening to the sports channel and sorting my books. I haven't been reading them. You know, there are some appalling titles. So something I was mentioning to you, it's terrorism, insurgency, guerrilla warfare from the beginning. They don't say that, but it's implied. From the American What? This sort of stuff has been around forever. Alexander the Great would have run across guerrilla warfare 300 plus BC in Afghanistan. He wasn't able to defeat the Afghans. He wandered around there, naming places after himself, maybe the occasional one after his horse, Bucephalus, which means kind of like cowhead. And eventually the only expedient he came up with for pacifying the country was marrying a princess from Afghanistan. Her name was Roxanne. She, I think, was the first Roxanne in history.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I think, people are called Alexander, not just kings of southeastern Europe or emperors of Russia, because of Alexander the Great. And even popes, I think some of them are called.
Look at this. It's so calm. I can put these little tidbits right down and they're not flying away. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's because we're in the Leitha Mountains. It's a little bit breezy when we're out exposed to the elements on Silver Trail.
Yeah.
But it was just breezy. I'm not using understatement.
No, it was lovely.
At any rate, so guerrilla warfare doesn't start with the American Revolution. So this guy who wrote the book, it's been around for a while. I think it was around, I don't know, maybe the Afghan War of the 80s or something like that. I don't think it was around in 2001, but maybe it was. And this guy was the guy writing it advised the American.
You're going to get all the cheese, of course.
About that's good. Thank you. About Middle Eastern affairs. So he's worried about terrorism from there, and he's basically, his argument is, they have no special claim on terrorism. They, like it's been used by the Americans. What they tended to do was tarring and feathering with people that they didn't like in the American Revolution. Perhaps some of my ancestors on my mom's side were subjected to that.
Did you want the pudding or no?
Yeah, I wanted. Yep.
You do.
Yep,
okay.
So they were some of the ancestors on my mom's side were United Empire loyalists. So what that was is people who were loyal to the Empire, the British Empire, during the American Revolution. And they were largely run out of town on a rail. That's another expression. People were actually done. That actually happened. But
I don't even know what that means, though.
I'm not sure.
I've never known. Does it mean railroad?
No, it was on a rail. And some were tarred and feathered. I don't know how bad that was. But presumably the tar was kind of hard to clean. Anyway. They ended up in Quebec for a while, and then they headed to Ontario for a while, and some of them actually were around Sarnia, apparently. Then they headed out west, intermixing all the way with all sorts of folks, including people who've been around in the New World for 10,000 years. You got that? 10,000. Now, So all that's intermingled with Vietnam. I'm pretty sure the Vietnamese War is in there. They were wonderful. Like the Vietnamese War really, I consider it a battle, a long extended battle in the Cold War, and the Americans won the Cold War. So all you lefties going, oh, the Vietnamese beat them. The Vietnamese have to deal with the Americans now because they don't have anyone to protect them. They are so stupid that, there they are. They booted the Americans out, and who's to the north of them? The commie Chinese. Boy, was that smart. Because what did they call it? They used to call the area south of it's really the folks that took over in Vietnam were commies, and they were Tonkin Vietnamese imperialists. So that's separate from Cochin China, which is the south. And then they actually called it, I think, Cochin China, which is South Vietnam. Like they call that Indochina because the Chinese are involved there. You think they might want to get involved there again? No, because the nifty, shifty, hefty lefties watching. No way, imperialism's a white invention. You're a kid. Oh yeah. Any folks that are thinking that, grab a brain, and if you can't grab one, you might as well just sign off. Now, so here's some folks who tried in something like guerrilla warfare against the Vietnamese in Laos. What were the Vietnamese doing in Laos? Could it have been Tonkinese imperialism and it worked? So, like these Miao people who are native to there. Native! A small little minority, oppressed. Miao. I'm told there were 750,000 of them. When the Vietnamese moved in there, a little while later, 14,000 of them were ethnically cleansed. According to the account I ran across, and this wasn't on the internet, the rest of the 750,000 didn't make it out. It's like, what was it Jim Morrison saying? No one here gets out alive. They didn't make it alive anywhere. They were, 14,000 were ethnically cleansed, the rest were genocided. That's how non-democracies handle guerrilla warfare. They just wipe the guerrillas out. You got that? The ancient Assyrians were relatively civilized by comparison.
It smells nice. Somebody's having a fire.
Yeah, it's right here. I checked it. Yeah, there. I wanted to check in case the wind sprung up so we could head there. But it's well populated. It's family reunion for Christmas time. It doesn't look like one nuclear family. It's a good idea. We might have just improvised, Just come up here. It's great weather. From Lethbridge or Cardston or whatever. So, what was it? This is in Cambridge Ancient History. One guy's talking. It's English terms and slightly antiquated. I hope they're coming up with a new edition of the Cambridge Ancient History. The last one I checked was the last volumes came out maybe in the 70s. So a little bit out of date. But so this, I think it was in the first edition. He's an English writer. He said the Assyrians specialized in was calculated frightfulness. Now, that's kind of like the British term frightfulness for terror. Calculated terror. But what they tended to do was just import-export people. They did ethnic cleansing. So, again, in the Cambridge Ancient History, one writer said, he didn't use the term ethnic cleansing, I don't think. Probably didn't exist when he was writing. But he said, he called it deportations, I think. He said, like, in the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which lasted from 911 BC to roughly 609 BC, so roughly 300 years, 302 years, half the deportations that occurred in antiquity occurred, just with the Assyrian. But, so they're the ones who lost the 10 lost tribes of Israel, the 10 tribes. It wasn't really 10 tribes. They didn't lose the priestly class. The priestly class were a separate tribe. They weren't part of Judah, and I gather that they kind of traveled around. That's, I think some people might say, the Jews only have the right to the southern part of what they call Palestine. It's Israel. No, the priests, I think some were locals, but some kind of like traveled around. So they came from the tribe of Levi. See how that works out? So the southern area, the area of Judah, was actually the tribe of Judah, and as I recall, Benjamin, and then Simeon.
Can I open this?
Yeah, sure. Simeon was kind of like the Negev desert, and I don't think they were terribly successful.
I'm going to have a few, even though it had some chocolate on it.
Descendants of Simeon, I don't think they were very successful in taking that. So really, the tribe of Judah is really 3 tribes, and plus whatever was left of the Levites. So 3 tribes and some. So it was like 8.5 tribes got lost, but they got lost by the Assyrians. They weren't really lost, they were deported. And then the Assyrians didn't like to leave areas like that vacated. So what they did was they brought in Arabs. And they centered around the traditional capital, northern capital of Israel, called Samaria. So they were named after that. So they're Samaritans, and they still exist. They're the only Arabs who have any right to any part of what they call Palestine, or the Holy Land, or whatever you want to call it. I call it Israel. Now that doesn't include where the Palestinians came from. The name Palestine, it's Palestine, something like that. In Arabic, it's Philistine. And yes, we know, I don't care what the Bible says about where the Philistines were located. I care where the Assyrians locate them. They called it Palashtu. See how that's related to Palestine? Maybe you don't. Okay, and they called it Palashtu, and it was located in the Gaza Strip. So they were dealing with places like Gaza and Ekron. Now Ekron's in Israel, and it shouldn't be. It's called Tel Mikne by them. And it's just barely in Israel. It should be given to the folks in the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip should be slightly larger than it is. Traditional. It was 5 cities. It was kind of like city-states or something like that. And, Gath, Ekron, Ashdod. I'm glancing on one of them. I mentioned Gaza. It still exists today. But basically, it's all populated. There's no way, this is the world's biggest prison. Hearing someone on CBC, reporting on how brutal the war was there and all that sort of stuff. We've kept on hearing, I was looking at Adbusters, folks crawling through tunnels, in or out of the world's biggest prison, which is the Gaza Strip. But this person who must have had dual citizenship, they were wanting to come back to Canada once the war hit, once their butt-headed buddies got the Israelis concerned enough about being at a constant state of war. It's just, it's low-level war all the time with the folks in the Gaza Strip. And then eventually the Israelis just get tired of the random nature of the rocket attacks. It's attacks on civilians. And then civilians getting kidnapped and held for ransom. Wow. That's you folks on the left wing are saying, Hamas, they're our brothers in arms or something like that. Yeah, they kidnap civilians and hold them for ransom. Shame on you. And Hamas, shame on you, but you're beyond shame. You guys don't care.
That popcorn's delicious.
You shouldn't have had that.
I know I shouldn't.
I can see.
I can't have chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
If I could have chocolate, I would have eaten the whole
like
bag.
this.
I know. Because what I planned on doing is just having one to taste it.
I
But
know.
I was like, well, I'll have a little more.
You're gonna have a headache.
Yeah.
Anyway, Palashtu. That's what it was called by the Assyrians, and it's Philistia in Hebrew terms, or that would be more like, I suspect, Greek terms. But where the Philistines were, there are 5 cities. Okay.
I'm going to eat this Larabar, though, because I can eat this one, no chocolate in that.
So it's the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is Palestine. Anything else? Palestine is just a imperial designation for that area. I gather it was first applied to the general area once the Romans ethnically cleansed the Jews out of there. So it wasn't just imperialism, it's a sign of ethnic cleansing. And what they were saying to the Philistines is, there you go, that's your territory now. Go for it, you settle it. It's not their territory. That's Romans. So roughly 70 AD and then 135 AD under Hadrian.
But if you think about it, a lot of the natives here have been moved around and put into places that they normally wouldn't be in exactly. And
With the Philistines, what the Romans were saying is, you can stay in the Gaza Strip, but you go into this area that belongs to one of your traditional enemies, the Jews. You can have it, because we've cleared it out for you.
what's that tribe that we were talking to somebody about? They were surrounded by their enemies.
Which tribe?
Oh,
The Hopi, maybe, with the Navajo.
yeah, I think so.
There's something wrong with the way that reserve was put up.
Yeah.
Because a huge big reserve for the Navajo and huge big reserves for the Apache. Those folks moved in late. Okay, so imperialism is not just a European or a white phenomenon. News flash. This would be before Europeans made it over here, I think. So they came down from the north. They're related to folks from around where you come from, the Navajo and Apache. They're related to the Beaver people that come from around Grand Prairie. And then something happened. I suspect it was bad climate. It could have been 900 AD. And I'm figuring something got the Vikings all stirred up like a hornet's nest. Cold weather caused by, you see, like the English, as I recall, reported them storming their shore 793 AD. 792 AD, this is from the New World. The Mayans recorded a meteor or a comet. I think it was a comet, and that might have hit the world and caused some sort of a canopy to happen. Dust and water vapor, and it made it a little cold for the people in Norway, Scandinavia generally. And so they started spreading, and they eventually spread to the New World. Within a couple of 100 years, a little over, they made it to the New World. It was around 1000 AD, they made it to the New World. Got them all stirred up. I suspect around 500 AD, some other guy has done some work on this. He's was the world's leading dendrochronologist. He said a little after 500 AD, a comet hit the world. And I'm telling you, it's around that time, the Angles and the Saxons, plus the Jutes and the Frisians came over from Europe. And, like archaeologists know about this, but they don't want you to know about it. Because they'll say, oh, there's signs of flooding along the coast of Germany. And the coast of Germany is low. You know how low. It's like Holland, maybe not quite as bad. The Frisians came from Holland, most of them. You can imagine what flooding would have been like along there. So 500 is, I think it was like 534 AD, for 5 years the world's trees stopped growing. And so they get flooded out, and the ones that survive, they're going, where do we go? We're not growing crops here. Because if the world's trees stop growing, you can imagine what happens to crops. They'd grow a little bit, but there'd be a canopy of dust and water vapor, at least initially, up in the air, way above the atmosphere actually, and it'd be blocking the sun. So trouble growing crops. And you're going, well, like we don't have a world-eye view of what's happening. We only have a worm's eye view. This would be the Vikings. This would be the folks, what do they call them? Not Algonquian, but I'm glitching on it. But the people like the Na-Dene and the Beaver, they're going, we're up in the north here. It's freezing cold. They wouldn't be growing crops, but geez, there's hardly any berries for the animals to eat.
Yeah.
We'd better head down south where we know it's kind of sunny. And so some of them made it all the way down to Arizona. The Western Apache Reserve is there. They're related to the Beaver people. They're related to the Sarcee people, the Tsuut'ina as they're called, southwest of Calgary. So there's a bit of a break from the Beaver to the Tsuut'ina, and then there's a huge break down to the Apache and the Navajo. Anyway, the Navajo have this huge big reserve, and inside, I think it's their reserve, that just envelops the Hopi. The Hopi would be the natives in that area, and they're kind of in a mountainous area, and they kind of fell back on the mountains and said, okay, you're at a disadvantage coming at us. You're at a numerical advantage, but we've got the height advantage, and you can't take us out. So, but there was a knock-on effect, because you've heard of the Aztecs, right? You folks, hopefully you've heard of them. They're latecomers. They call them Uto-Aztecan. Uto means like the Utes. Utah is named, if I'm not mistaken, after the Utes. Well, Utah's a long way from the central part of Mexico. And I think what happened is these Algonquian, I'm glitching on the generic name for the group. Anyway, they tend to call themselves Dene. I think that just means the people. So there's the Na-Dene up around the northern part of Alberta and stuff like that. But they're all over the place. Pretty well all of what's left of the Northwest Territories was them. All of the Yukon, all of Alaska, except the parts that were taken over by the Inuit. Yeah, the Inuit came in, and where some of the places, these Athabascan, that's what they're called. They wouldn't have wanted it, so the Inuit took that over, but I think they might have displaced a few Athabascan people. But the Athabascan people took over a substantial part, the Chilcotin. I'd pronounce it for you, but I'd end up spitting all over the table. It'd be disgusting. Well known for the rough sound system. Actually, that one isn't so bad. It's the Shuswap that's so bad. Chilcotin are Athabascans, I recall. But huge number of tribes in northeastern BC. But they would have come down, and they would have displaced a lot of people that were the ancestors of the Aztecs, and the rest is prehistory. It's before history, but you can tell that, and they were really warlike. They were vicious and brutal when they hit Mexico, and they were still vicious and brutal. The neighboring tribes in Mexico cooperated. Cortez wouldn't have been able to take over by himself, but the neighboring tribes said, you want to get rid of the Aztecs? We'll help you. So, like it was one empire replacing another.
Well, thank you for that talk.